Well, we're not so far away from Georgia and Clemson. Really, a huge battle that is coming on Saturday night in Charlotte. I almost said Athens, but that's where you get accustomed to playing big football games. But Georgia and Clemson, the Dogs, a 3-point underdog to Clemson. I think it's the first time they've opened up as underdogs in a long time. Maybe the Boise State game in 2011. But I did want to go over some stuff that we had over on the site today and what we were hearing. It's really, I'm going to include the link below to make sure that y'all have an opportunity to read everything. But in talking with a lot of folks around Georgia and inside the program, you do get the feeling that they're going to have to figure out how to gut this game out for a win. I mean, the injuries have stacked up so much that that's a concern for sure. Amongst I don't think there's really any secret anymore. You're losing a lot of guys out there, and there are people that you really would like to have playing. Georgia knew they wouldn't have George Pickens in this game. I don't know that they knew they wouldn't have Eric Gilbert. They thought they would have Tyke Smith. They're not going to have him out there, it looks like. Darnell Washington the same way. I mean, those guys I just mentioned, all four of them are five-star players. Nevertheless, Dominic Blaylock. So there's a lot of guys that are banged up, and this has been a bruising camp at Georgia. The question is, really, did the physicality pay off at the end of the day? Did playing that way in practice, or did practicing that way matter a lot for the first game? Here's what one insider said, is that talking about Georgia's ability to deal with Clemson's defensive line. They said, I could see us winning that matchup, yes. I just don't think you go in thinking, oh yeah, we're going to handle their defensive line, no problem. It's going to be a challenge. I think everyone knows that. Is anyone talking about our defensive line against Clemson's offensive line, or just how we were going to have problems with their defensive line? So, one thing Kirby talked about during fall camp, and he said this to ESPN the other day, was that they really wanted to get depth developed. And they've had an opportunity because, it's not just been the guys I've named. That you also had Warren Erickson, who's a starter that missed time. You also had John Fitzpatrick, who's a starter that missed time. There was a moment in the first scrimmage where the offense didn't have half of its projected starters for the season. Guys like Kyrus Jackson and Jermaine Burton didn't play in that. So there's been a lot of time missed for Georgia. Here's what Kirby said at the time. It said lately, getting quality depth and more guys that can play winning football, that's kind of been the objective of camp, and we've been able to do that. So, I'm putting the link down there. I would really encourage you to take a look at it because, and also, too, we've got a great sale that's ending today, Sunday, $2 for 2 months of the site. So that's as good a deal as you can get on Dog Post, and it's running out right now. So click the link below and sign up while you can. But one thing about getting quality depth, Georgia's recruited really well. Is this going to be a situation where they recruited well and the guys that is this a Nick Chubb situation where Todd Gurley goes out and you discover Nick Chubb, if you want to put it that way? I mean, is A.D. Mitchell a receiver that no one really knows about nationally, and they will? Is Brock Bowers that way? It's really hard to ask true freshmen, some of whom did not play their senior seasons of high school football, to come in and play well in college football in their first game against one of the top teams in the country. So you're asking a lot to begin with. It's also asking a lot. So the concern right now is really on the offensive side of the ball for Georgia, which means to me, very specifically at receiver, which means to me that Georgia may do something they didn't really want to do in this game, which is they may just try to out-physical Clemson, which is going to be hard to do because of the front four specifically for Clemson. I also think you're allowing their linebackers the ability to basically play the Oklahoma drill. That's not how you want to play them. And you want to play them the same way Ohio State did. You want to get them out there. You want to pressure their secondary. And that's what you want to do. Well, you know what you've got, and you know what's missing. I don't. There are some guys I don't know if they're missing or not. Okay, I'm not going to go down all those lists yet, but you're not going to have your best pure receiver, which is George Pickens, and you've known that for a long time. How good will Kyrus Jackson be? How good will Jermaine Burton be? A.D. Mitchell, how's he going to play? Marcus Rosemy. What about Smith? There are guys that are going to have to step up. This notion of next man up is so overused, and it's really just not a great way to look at it. Or a great. I mean, you don't want to use that term, but that's where Georgia's at right now. And the guys who they've recruited, and they've recruited well. It's not been unstoppable at receiver, but when you're losing that many guys that are that good, there's cause for concern. You got other folks. I'm just kind of picking the problem with me giving y'all these on here is that it's so I can't give you every single thing. You really need to click on the site to take advantage of what we've got. I do point out here too something that Dabo Swinney said this week, and I don't know if Clemson may be further along with this than it seemed when this quote was from, but they are trying to figure out who their center is going to be. And in the recent past, when Dabo had this quote, they were down to 3 players, 2 of whom have never started a college football game. One, Matt Brockhurst, who probably, I guess, will be the starter at center, has 13 career starts. So enough. But here's what Dabo said, and this is the part that I think I would be worried about if I were a Clemson fan. He said, it's still a work in progress, talking about who's going to be the center. I think all of them have done some good things. The biggest thing is consistency. All 3 physically can get the job done, and I think that all 3 mentally can get the job done. Right there, he's talking about calling out who's what in the in terms of establishing the linebackers, et cetera, and the coverages. And then here's the part that you kind of go, oh boy. He says, but consistency with our snaps, that's been the area we've got. That's the area we've got to make strides in. So you never want to hear that from a coach talking about the center to quarterback exchange. That's just not ideal. Snapping a football under center is one thing, but shotgun snap, that's a whole nother thing, it feels like. Now, Georgia doesn't always line, no college team always lines up with a nose head up on the center. So that's get that out of your brain. But you do want to be able to execute every single snap that you can. And that's something Georgia talked about with Warren Erickson, but Cedric Van Pran Granger is a guy that came right in and has had a lot of looks because of Warren Erickson's injuries. So, one thing that Kirby said this week too, and again, I would encourage you to click on the link below. This was another thing that Kirby seems to me confident right now. The Georgia fan base does not, and that's just sort of what they do. I mean, that's their briar patch. They want to be there. They are not comfortable as a fan base being the big bad bully. They're not comfortable with that, and they never have been, because of the years and decades really of Larry Munson and Vince Dooley. The same way. Just there's not. That's just never been a part of their DNA. But here's what Kirby had to say. He said everybody's a lot more comfortable with a guy at the helm understanding what to do in Coach Monken's offense. He was talking about JT Daniels. In terms of repetition, there's been a lot more. Just in the spring alone, we were able to get a lot more work done. And the good thing about the spring that Georgia had is the receivers who are going to play now are the receivers who were healthy in the spring. George got hurt like at the beginning-ish of the spring. I think it was the 3rd practice. So they were dealing without George for a while. And look, Georgia's going to have to figure out how to gut this thing out. This is not, they're not going to have some going away win. I don't see that happening. I mean, Clemson might beat Georgia like that, but I don't. And as it stands right now, this is, to me, seems like it's going to be a very tight matchup between these two schools. And you better make sure your special teams know what they're doing for Clemson, Georgia, because if you don't, it could cost you the game. Make sure you're clicking out the link below. We'll see you on the website.